Goodson and Bill Todman were the king of the panel shows in the 50s and 60s. They made a lot of them, and almost all of them had long, strong, good runs. What's My Line started things off in 1950, and that lasted till 1967. The Name's the Same came after that on the fledgling ABC network in 1951 and lasted till 1955. Then there's I've Got a Secret, which started its run in 1952 and lasted in 1967. The same as What's My Line. But they did have some shows around this time that didn't last too long. One such show was a panel show that took the formula of I've Got a Secret and took it into a different and interesting direction. I give you Make the Connection.
And now, Borden's presents TV's newest and liveliest panel show, Make the Connection. And now let's meet our Make the Connection panel.
Debuting on July 7th, 1955, Make the Connection was a panel show in the same vein as What's My Line and I've Got a Secret. In this show, the panel had to figure out the main connection between two challengers. Like What's My Line and I've Got a Secret, the game was bare bones, but because the guesses and the camaraderie between the panelists and the questions being asked being so far off base, they ended up being hilarious. And that was key comedy and what pretty much drew for What's My Line and I've Got a Secret. But on the subject of Make the Connection, what happened that made the show be so short-lived? It only got about 13 weeks on NBC. Well, the story of the host gives us a good clue as to why it was short-lived.
Hello again, and welcome to this session of Make the Connection. Tonight our panel is going to try to make the connection between two or more contestants.
When the show debuted, the host was Jim McKay. A lot of folks nowadays know him for being a stable presence on ABC for Wide World of Sports and their Olympic coverage back in the day. His coverage of the Munich Massacre during the 1972 games was very memorable and earned him tons of accolades. Jim as a game show host, though, he kept the game moving, but he really didn't have the wit or charm that was needed for a panel show. I could also tell he had a bit of the nerves happening during his run. He was on the show for the first 4 episodes and was let go from the position. Hold on a second. Does this mean I could play this ditty I shamelessly ripped off from Botchmania and used in the Let's Make a Deal Games of 90 video? Oh yeah, we're bringing it back.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this session of Make the Connection. I'm really delighted to be here as a moderator of this unique panel show, and it is a unique panel show because, as far as I know, it's the only panel show in existence that doesn't have Audrey or Jane Meadows on the panel. Not that we wouldn't like to have them, but it's unusual in that respect.
Once Jim McKay was shown the door, Gene Rayburn took his place. Yes, that Gene Rayburn. Before Match Game made its grand debut in 1962 on NBC, he made his first ever hosting debut with Make the Connection. His rapier-like wit was on full display, like the Meadows gag that I led off this segment in. He connected better with the panelists than what McKay did, and it's always interesting to see Gene before Match Game. He was a really good panelist on The Name's the Same when he was there, and that experience, along with the experience I think he was doing around that time with Steve Allen's show, gave him a lot of what was needed to be great on the other side of the stage. With this style of show, we also need to talk about the panel. Like most shows of its time, there was a permanent panel. This show had its panelists as Eddie Bracken, Gloria DeHaven, Gene Clavin, and Betty White. Yes, another first on this show, as this is the first panel show that Betty White was a regular on. Even back then, she had a fantastic job and had this knack for playing games. The makeup of the panel is reminiscent of I've Got a Secrets panel, with Betty and Gloria filling the Jane Meadows and Bess Meyerson roles, Eddie Bracken in the Bill Cullen role, and Gene Clavin in the Henry Morgan role. As for the camaraderie with the panel, it didn't quite click. It's not to say it couldn't be there, since all 4 of them were the panels from the beginning, but I think it just needed some time. I mean, chemistry isn't made in a day, but the show never got the chance. The format of the game is this. 2 contestants with a connection come on the show, and it's the panelist's job to figure out the connection. One panelist starts asking yes or no questions a la I've Got a Secret, and they continue to do so until the bell rings. Once the bell rings, the challengers earn $25 and the next panelist in line starts to ask questions. They continue to do this until the panel figures out the connection or 6 bells are ring and the contestants win the maximum of $150. While the connections seem interesting, it's just another I've Got a Secret with a form that could actually be used for I've Got a Secret. I wouldn't be shocked if it was actually used on I've Got a Secret before it became its own show. Near the end of the show, the tradition of having a celebrity guest play the game is here. Here, the celebrity is paired up with a civilian or group of civilians, and the panel has to start to make the connection. The interactions at the end made this pretty interesting, especially one instance when they had Sam Levinson reunite with his old dance band for one last hurrah in front of millions of people watching at home. But then again, they did the same thing on I've Got a Secret, and that show was doing really well and was really strong with, honestly, a much stronger panel. The last show would air on September 29th, 1955, making Make the Connection the second shortest-lived Goodson Todman Panel show, apart from What's Going On, which only lasted 5 weeks. The handful of episodes that do exist have been brought out in special instances on GSN and Buzzer, but only a handful actually still exist. I can see why the show wasn't around for long. Sure, you had the Goodson Todman Panel seal of approval, but when you're replacing the host after 4 shows and a much better version of the same show is still going and I've Got a Secret, it kind of makes the show redundant in a way. At least with Goodson Todman, when they did try another panel show, they changed things up and it gave us To Tell the Truth. And honestly, nobody's career was hurt by this. Everyone that I mentioned on the show, from the host to the panelists, would do much bigger and better things. Just this show was kind of a dud and kind of didn't need to be on the air because the much better show was still on the air. So it was kind of perfect mid-50s summer filler because everybody was just copying each other right now. There wasn't really much experimentation until Ernie Kovacs got on the air. And you started to see a lot of experimentation. But that's another story for another day. And that'll do it for this edition of 26 Weeks or Less. I thank you all for watching. Be sure to like this video and share it on all the socials. Subscribe to the channel for more great game show content. And if you want to support the channel, become a Patreon backer at patreon.com/gameshowgumbo. I'm Cindy Seidelman, and we'll see everyone next time.
This has been a Mark Goodson, Bill Todman production.